Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Could you possibly move the red microphone closer?
Yeah, put it here.
Thank you.
I don't know if that's better. Okay, translation again. Um, my dear king, if an agricultural field is cultivated again and again, the power of its production decreases, and whatever seeds are sown there are lost, just as drops of ghee on a fire never extinguish the fire, but a flood of ghee will. Similarly, overindulgence and lusty desires mitigates such desires entirely. So I thought to speak on this verse instead of verse 32, because I found it was easier to understand. So when an agricultural field is farmed um, like over and over and over again, then um, it loses all of its nutrients. So it's unable to grow produce constantly, continually. That's why gardeners and farmers are always putting like manure and like layering different like hay and manure and leaves to try and like replenish the soil with nutrients. Because obviously when you plant something in the soil, then the seed absorbs all the nutrients and then takes it with it to its plant, and you harvest that and then you do that over and over again. Then the soil becomes like destitute of its nutrients. Um, so in this example, we're hearing how yeah, by you have desires and you um, execute them a lot, if you do a lot of them, then you will lose the desire, so-called lose the desire to do it. But Srila Prabhupada saying in the purport, he uses these two words. Um, okay, um, possibly, and what was it? Silly those ridiculous. Oh, yeah. So possibly and chance. So it's not like a guaranteed thing. Like, like my husband was giving an example that if you eat too many potato chips, like, you go out and you buy like 2 bags of potato chips and you eat 2 bags of potato chips, you'll like lose your taste for them because you'll feel sick, but it doesn't mean that you give up it fully. Like you don't stop eating potato chips completely. And I was thinking of other examples where this happens in life. Like I had a friend, she's a devotee now, but when she was telling me when she was a kid, when she was young in New Zealand, her parents caught her smoking a cigarette when she was like 12 or something. So her dad sat her down and made her smoke an entire pack of cigarettes until she threw up. And she said that it was like very traumatizing for her. And she didn't smoke again for years. And then she started again when she was like a teenager. Um, so this overindulgence in a desire doesn't necessarily completely purify us of the desire. And that's what Srila Prabhupada is saying here in the purport. But if you dump a lump of ghee on the fire may possibly be extinguished entirely. He's not saying that the fire will completely be extinguished entirely. Similarly, he says in the purport here that um, those who are born in the lower classes, they have an opportunity to enjoy their sinful activities fully, for thus there is a chance that these activities will become distasteful to them and they will give them up entirely purified. So there's a chance and it's possible, but it's not guaranteed. Um, and I'm sure we can all think of examples from our own life of things that we're like really wanting to give up, but it's if you overindulge in them, thinking, okay, I'll just do it a lot and then I'll get over it, but it doesn't actually completely purify the desire. maybe it doesn't, there's maybe a few examples. I'm not sure if I can think of any examples in my life where oh, no, I do have actually, where you overindulge in something and then you just never want to do it again. When I was a teenager, I remember there was one particular type of alcohol that I would drink a lot, and I remember drinking it so much that I got really, really sick, and I never touched it again. But it didn't stop me from drinking other types of alcohol, but that particular type I never touched. I got so sick from it. So, but it doesn't, yeah, purify the desire completely. It's not powerful enough to do that. So how do we get over these desires for sure? If it's not 100% guaranteed that we can get over them by just overindulging, then then how do we do it? Well, thankfully we have our scriptures, which give us ample examples and opportunities on how to do that. Um, and the main way is to purify the desire and become pure-hearted. And there's this really nice verse in Srimad Bhagavatam, in the first canto, second chapter, text 17, a famous verse. Shrivita Swakata Krishna, Punya Shravana Kirtana, Vidyantosti Abhadrani, Vidnoti Satam. And Srila Prabhupada, the purport, sorry, the translation says, Sri Krishna, personally Godhead, who is the Parama, the super soul in everyone's heart, and the benefactor of truthful devotee, cleanses the desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee, who has developed the urge to hear his message, which in themselves are virtuous when properly heard and chanted. So Sri Krishna, the personal Godhead, who is residing in the heart of the devotee, and is the benefactor for the devotee who is truthfully following his path, cleanses the desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee, who has developed the urge to hear his message. So by following the process of Krishna consciousness, we develop a natural urge to hear and learn more about Krishna, and to hear more and learn more about Krishna's processes. So, so Krishna, taking note of that, Paramama takes note of what we're like our desires in the heart, and he says, okay, you have an urge to hear my message. Let me help you clean your heart so that you can hear it properly. So then he helps get rid of our desires according to our level of surrender, helps us overcome them so that we can kind of move past that and step up onto a higher level of bhakti, be able to hear more clearly. Just like we often hear that the four regulative principles, these just actually bring us to the platform of being a human being. And we hear also that what separates human beings from animals is that humans have the ability to question and to like assimilate spiritual knowledge. So if we're not following the four regulative principles, then we're really not even on the platform of a human being, which means that our ability to question and assimilate spiritual knowledge is also uh, not at its like highest potential. So even coming to the platform of being able to give up the four good, being able to follow the four good principles, no meat eating, no intoxication, no illicit sex, and no gambling, gives us higher consciousness that we can actually, okay, now I can like hear a little bit more about Krishna consciousness, and then naturally from there we desire an urge to hear more, and then Krishna purifies the heart, helps us purify the heart. So um, while are we're trying to chant better and hear better, and Krishna's helping us clean our heart, but we still have these desires, you know. We still have some material desires. We still have some bad habits. So what do we do when we progress from there? So we have to also be practical with ourselves and take note of where we are. Uh, as long as Devaraja Swami was saying, it's a nice point in his one of his evening reading classes. I think it was just the other day, and he was saying how we have to constantly be uh, taking stock of like what's going on in our heart, and this helps us become aware of where we are in our consciousness. Like, okay, what's going on for me right now? Where am I at? How much am I reading? How much am I chanting? um, what are my desires? Um, And this taking stock of this and taking note of this helps us be like, okay, where am I in my devotional advancement? So when we take note of what's actually going on for us in our heart, um, and maybe we realize, okay, I'm chanting, but maybe I'm still making offenses while I'm chanting the Lord. Even though I'm trying not to, I still have these material desires that aren't being fully purified yet. So what do I do? So you have to be practical and uh, with ourselves. And something that I've heard is really helpful is like regulating our desires. And it was even in like we hear this in like a beginning stage too. Like I remember my one of my long-standing mentors in Krishna consciousness, when she was very early in her very early years of Krishna consciousness, she used to smoke a lot, um, and and she was just like could not give it up, and she was trying to regulate it. I mean, she got special mercy. She just gave it up like really quickly. But the idea of trying to regulate the desires, like okay, you smoke, then you want to stop smoking, so you just smoke 1 day a week. That's one cigarette 1 day a week. And then you reduce. Okay, now you just smoke one cigarette 3 days a week. And then you reduce again once a week, like that. Until you just have it once a month, until you just have it once a year, until you can give it up completely. Of course, for devotees, that example is not very useful because we don't take intoxication in any form, including smoking cigarettes, which is a form of intoxication. Um, but for example, like let's say you're trying to give up eating chocolate, um, and you have chocolate every single day. You have it for breakfast, you have it for lunch, you have it for dinner, you have chocolate porridge, you have chocolate after you eat lunch, dinner, you have a piece of chocolate cake. But you're trying to give it up, so then you reduce like, okay, I'm just gonna have it once a day, and then okay, I'm just gonna have it, um, for 3 days of the week, and then yeah, slowly let that back until you just lose your taste for it, or you only need to indulge in it like once a week or once a month. You have like a chocolate day. So like that, you can try and um, regulate your desires. Another thing is like if you have a problem with your smartphone's not quite a devotee yet, and you're often getting stuck on like YouTube or Facebook or Instagram, then like instead of every single day doing it, you just put aside, okay, on 1 day of the week, I'm going to do it for an hour. I'm just going to scroll endlessly for 1 hour during 1 day of the week, and then um, slowly you can reduce like that. Because smartphone items is a real problem. So while we're doing that aspect of trying to reduce our material desires by being like trying to regulate them in a practical way, and then putting emphasis into chanting our rounds more attentively and trying to commit less offenses when we're chanting the holy name of the Lord, and also trying to um, hear more about Krishna, increase our reading, increasing our service attitude, like trying to put more energy into the 9 processes of devotional service, then we'll develop a higher taste and we'll lose the taste for the lesser things. And I remember this, like, this sticks out for me a lot when I was first meeting with devotees. And of course, I was like 19, I was like, into the pop culture party scene, and I was drinking a lot. And, um, and then I was thinking, okay, I gotta like, I wanted to stop, but I realized it was really bad for me. It was making me fat. I didn't want to be fat. So I was like, okay, gotta stop this thing. Um, but it was really hard because it was like a friend circle, like a friend circle would do that. But then thankfully for me, but not for her, one of my best friends got pregnant somehow. So she also stopped drinking. So we were able to regulate, I was able to regulate my drinking addiction with her because she was not drinking either. And then at the same time, I was also going to the loft and I was doing a lot more service and I was like going to a lot of kirtan programs and I started chanting and reading. And I just remember very clearly that when I turned 20, I was staying with this, like a host family at the time. And they gave me like, the dad was like, here, let me get you a beer. And he like popped open a beer and he gave it to me. And I remember taking a sip and thinking like, oh my God, this is the grossest thing that I've ever had in my entire life. I was thinking like, wow, this is I remember thinking, wow, the devotees told me that I would lose my taste for this. And it's actually happened. I've actually lost my taste for alcohol. This is amazing. And really like, oh, the process of Krishna consciousness is so cool. I've actually just lost my taste for this thing that I used to like so much. Um, so it does work, and it might not be like easy to see. It's like, oh, this desire is so strong. I don't know how I'm ever gonna lose my taste for it. But if we just, regulate it, and then we try and increase our sadhana and our hearing and chanting, then Krishna will help us purify our heart and actually lose the desire and the taste for doing that. And there was another verse that I wanted to read. Um, yeah, that was only just a different point. But yeah, so that's really, really amazing. And this verse from Bhagavad Gita in chapter 5, text 6, the translation is merely renouncing all activities, yet not engaging in devotional service to the Lord cannot make one happy, but a thoughtful person engaging in devotional service can achieve this spirit without delay. So another thing that we want to be cautious of, oh gosh, is let me find this. Please. Is this aspect of falsely renouncing, um, which is doesn't actually bring us any lasting change in our life. So in Nectar of Devotion, there's this, we hear about these two phrases, Bhagavad and Chapala Sutta. So this snippet from the preface, which is in the next sums it up, is that material engagement means accepting a particular status for some time and then changing it. This position of changing back and forth is technically known as Bhagavad, which means a position of alternating sense enjoyment and renunciation. A living entity cannot steadily remain either in sense enjoyment or in renunciation. Change is Change is going on perpetually, and we cannot be happy in either state because of our eternal constitutional position. Sense gratification does not endure for long, and therefore it is called chapala sukha, or flickering happiness. So these 2 points from this part about Bhagavad Gita, chapala sukha, and what I was reading in Bhagavad Gita are on the points of sometimes you can think, okay, well, I'll just give it up. I'll just give up my desires and I won't. Like I'll just go cold turkey. I'll just cut it off. But we don't put any emphasis extra into our hearing or chanting. We don't try and like take that energy and put it into something else. We just kind of like treading water and then just try and get rid of these, like cut them off completely. And that can be really hard. That doesn't necessarily work all the time. And you can have um, like you try to ignore your desires. I'm not going to deal with this. I'm just going to renounce it. Um, and then it can come out in a way that's weird later down the track. Because this gets built up inside if you're not trying to actively purify them. So we don't necessarily want to do that because um, it's not very healthy for like our mental psychology to just completely ignore a desire um, and and not try and work through it. Um, that can have sort of an opposite effect where we renounce it for the time being, but then we overindulge in it later. And a classic example that um, I would always give to people at Sankirtan is in in Bali they have, or in New Zealand they have these what are they called? It's a type of meditation. You do like a meditation retreat where you're completely silent. Forgot the name of it. But they have them in Auckland, really famous. You go to these centers and it's everyone's just completely silent. And the meditation practice is that no one speaks for like a week, or they do them for I think a week long time. But they also have ones that are like a month. And you go there and you just like everyone's silent, do different meditations, but no one's speaking. And then after this month-long period, these like, semi-yogis would go to this retreat. Then right after that, they could go to Bali. And then Bali has this island called Party Island, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's an island that's just like 24/7, continuously having parties. Um, and not like Krishna conscious parties, like very material, tamasic, hellish planet parties. So these people would go to this retreat to like practice, silence and inner work and breathing and, become experts at like controlling their speech and their thoughts, and they reach some sort of like, impersonal platform. And then right after that finishes, they do the complete opposite and they go to Party Island and just go crazy. So we think, okay, not that intense, but we do have things where like, okay, I'm not, I'm not gonna eat chocolate for an entire month. And then at the end of the month, you have like Ken's chocolate chip. What was it? It'd make these muffins, chocolate muffins with chocolate chips with chocolate icing on top and chocolate sprinkles. So you just go crazy and you're like buzzing. So yeah, so that's what I'm trying to make the point is that falsely renouncing doesn't actually fix our problem. It doesn't actually necessarily help us in our Krishna consciousness. Um, but and especially for not actively trying to purify the desires. Of course, it does. There are some examples of it working where you just like, I'm just going to not do this anymore, and you just cut it off completely, and you just fully focus on Krishna consciousness, and then you're like, oh, I just totally forgot that I even had that desire. Like, that's great, but that's because you're fully focusing and taking that same energy and you're putting it into your bhakti. Um, so yeah, anyway, I wanted to mention that, and Um, let's see. But yeah, there's also an example of karma yoga. Like you're doing your own activities. I really like doing this, but I'm gonna at least offer the results to Krishna. Um, and and yeah, it's always nice to have like if you or like dovetailing your desires. Like I really like um uh, cooking. Like I actually didn't really like cooking before I went to devotees. I never did it, but I really like eating things. It's like I like eating food. So I like prasad is like a huge thing. I really like, I'm a prasad bucket. I like when the prasad is really nice and satisfying. And I think it's actually quite important because prasad is what we eat. We only eat food that's offered to Krishna. And you don't want to have to, like, after eating a meal, feel like, oh, I'm unsatisfied. Let me go buy something from the supermarket that I can eat to satisfy myself if I wasn't satisfied from this prasad. And that happens, which is unfortunate. So that's why it's really nice to always like put energy and consciousness into making the prasad like really devastating. So that you don't feel the need to go and like buy something that's not even made by a devotee to eat it. Um, and and yeah, we can yeah, it's really nice to have it's really nice to have satisfying yourself and to be able to make the things that you would normally buy. Like maybe you go to the supermarket and you buy like bread, for example, that's a classic one. So instead of, doing that, why don't you just make your own bread at home? It's really not that complicated. It really just comes down to a time factor. Do I have the time to do this? No, I don't have the time to make bread. It's easier for me to just go to the supermarket and buy the bread. It's already sliced. That makes it so much easier. But really making it from home, it actually makes it taste so much better. You know exactly what you're putting into it. So much of the stuff you buy from the store, including breads, have so many, because they have to make them last for a certain amount of time. Like if you make a bread loaf at home, it really is only going to last for about 2 weeks max before it starts to get stale or moldy. Um, whereas if you buy bread from the supermarket, it will last for solidly about a month, maybe even longer. And you're wondering why that is. It's because it's got enriched white flour, which is white flour that's got other ingredients in it in order to extend the life process. They don't necessarily tell you what those ingredients are either. And then it also has lots of vitamins they put in it to make it more nutritious for you. But you're just like adding in things that don't need to be there. Like really, bread is just yeast, water, maybe sometimes sugar and flour. Um, anyways, getting technical, but it's so much nicer when you can just make those things at home. Like I make bread often at home because when I take care of the devotee that I take care of, she always has bread if she's not able to make it. I'm able to make it for her all the time. And I have a desire to eat toast. It's happens because I make toast for this person all the time. And I just want to always eat toast with butter on it. So I have to make the toast at home in order to satisfy that desire. It's hard. I have to regularly because I don't always have time to make bread. Anyways, there's an example. But yeah, it really does make a difference if we do it at home. And grains cooked by non-devotees do have an effect on the consciousness. It's undeniable. There's a really nice class by in Tom Ross's podcast, and it's with Melissa about the group. And there's a section of it where he's really going heavy on carbohydrates, and it's really nice to listen to if you're trying to get that desire, but you're not fully on the cusp and still go out try things. His class is like super heavy, but it's nice. It's hard to argue. You can just hold yourself at home. Um, yeah, so my notes here end with how much I like ice cream, which I won't go into. It's a whole other topic. But there's endless ways that we can try and dovetail our desires and consciousness. And the basic things like hearing chanting, we have a mindfulness devotional service, hearing chanting, remembering. But then even within our Krishna conscious movement, like, we cook prasad, we eat prasad, we hear pastime for Krishna, we give classes, we um, have kirtan, we sing for the Lord. So these things are actually really enjoyable activities. And it's like, being in really ecstatic kirtans, it's like, oh, I feel so like enlivened right now. And it's definitely much more enlivening to be in a really ecstatic kirtan with lots of devotees than just be like doing kirtan by yourself, like only you. Um, so to like be in those environments really helps. Like, okay, I want to be in this nice environment with these nice devotees. Um, Chanting, even if it's just like two devotees or three devotees, is better than just one devotee, or just by yourself. To be in that sangha, associating with the devotees, reading with the devotees, it makes it all easier when you have association with other devotees to do the devotional activities with, opposed to just doing it by yourself. So like even taking prasad is so nice when you can take prasad with other devotees. Um, it just increases that sangha. Reading is so much easier when you can do it with other devotees. For most people, not everybody. Some people are lone wolves, like to do things by themselves. But generally, associating with devotees, it's really beneficial for Krishna consciousness. So yeah, so just an overview. Um, we talked a little bit about how we have Asha Prabhupada saying in the purport of today's verse, like, there's a possibility that if you overindulge, you may be able to get free from a desire, and there's a chance that it might happen, but really it's not 100% guaranteed. So overindulgence in our desires, we might lose the flavor for a little bit, but then that flavor will come back, like 9 times out of 10. Um, so it's better to try and purify the desires in a regulated way while also taking that energy that we would be putting into desires and putting extra energy into our hearing and chanting, because that will actually purify the heart. And then, um, and purify the heart properly, so that we'll be able to fully lose taste for these other desires. And it also helps uh, if we, dovetail with whatever we can into Krishna consciousness, so that we can, if we have a desire to, you know, um, make a lot of money, you can dovetail that into Krishna consciousness. I want to make a lot of money, so let me make a lot of money, and then I'll give that money to a Krishna conscious project, and that way I'll be able to dovetail that desire. Um, so that always is also very helpful. And then not trying to artificially renounce, like I'm just over this and I'm just going to give it up and not do anything, like not give more energy to Krishna, not give any energy to this. I'm just going to cut it off and just hope for the best. That can be like false renunciation. And actually, that desire comes up at some other point in our life in a really strong and kind of perverted way. So it's better to just work through the desires while trying to regulate them, give more energy to your hearing and chanting, purify them. And then, how important it is to have, like nice prasadam that's really satisfying and tasting, so that we can, because that's what we eat. So it's really nice if it's satisfying, like um, well spiced and energies put into it. Because that could be for somebody like what what keeps them in Krishna consciousness. It's like that prasad is so good. It's definitely what brought me to Krishna consciousness. Was like, oh man, this food is like really good and it's really cheap and got me easy. So, so yeah, that's also really important. And then also associating with devotees, having nice quality association in Sangha, like devotees you can associate with who help enliven your Krishna consciousness. They have the qualities that you're looking for in devotees so that you can associate with them and be like, wow, I feel enlivened and uplifted in my lifestyle just from associating with the devotee for a split second. As we hear association with pure devotee um, can completely change our life. So if we get that opportunity, we're very fortunate. But even if we get the opportunity to associate with any devotee, um, it's also very nice, especially devotees that are we find very inspiring. So yeah, that's all that I really wanted to share about. Um, and I guess if we have about 15, 13 minutes left before the doors here at Nagari's temple open for Bhagavatam darshan. So if anybody would like to add anything, has any comments or questions, please, I'd love to hear from you. Mhm.
Hare Krishna Manuparalila.
Hi, Krishna.
Thank you for your class. I am really pleased that you leaned on the point that um, texts 33 and 34 are suggesting that there is a chance that one's activities will become detestful, but that it's certainly not guaranteed. And it's, I don't know, in my experience, it's kind of rare. Typically, the more one engages in mundane activity, the more the desire increases. Um, but of course, overindulgence can sometimes lead to a condition in which someone becomes detestful towards it, but usually I think that is temporary. In the short term, uh, one may one may feel disgusted by a certain type of activity that they've overindulged in, but because there is no superior activity, no higher taste, and there must be some activity, people will go back to whatever they have. Even they've become sick and tired of it, they'll do it again because there's nothing else. But it's certainly not advisable for devotees. We have superior engagement and much better ways to purify ourselves of mundane desires. We have lots of options, and they are all scrumptious. So we don't have to resort to this process of flooding. Um, there was actually a bogey yogi. Um, I can't remember his name, which is good. It should not be repeated and should not be heard. But his program was to engage his followers in flooding their system. They would have intensive sessions of sense gratification, pushing their bodies to the absolute limit. I don't want to go into the details, it gets quite nasty, um, but that was his program, and the idea that he was advocating is that you flood your system, and then afterwards your mind becomes peaceful and you can actually attain to some higher state of consciousness. But in practice, it didn't really work that way. Nobody was making any advancement. He had a lot of followers because um, it was an excuse for indulgence in all kinds of illicit activity. Uh, but even though people were overindulging, they didn't really lose their taste for that activity at all. They came back again and again to do the same things. Not a good program. Not at all a good program. Generally, it's usually the worst thing to do, but it's the last resort for for those who absolutely cannot control their senses under any circumstances. They're going to do these things anyway, rather than trying to force them or persuade them to do something that is contrary to their nature, um, and which they're not going to be able to do anyway. It would just be an artificial endeavor. Better to just let them peacefully do their thing with the hope that perhaps they'll get sick and tired of it. And it does sometimes happen that way. Sometimes even there are people who become devotees after becoming disgusted with material life. They've taken every liberty and indulged themselves to an extraordinary extent, and to the point at which they became sick and tired, and and then sought a superior alternative. And fortunately, they were guided to Krishna consciousness somehow. So it can work, but it's not the recommended path at all. Uh, there's thinking about the first verse here, verse 32. Um, if one acts in his profession according to his position in the modes of nature and gradually gives up these activities, he attains the nishkama stage. Um, and actually, more than that, more than just nishkama, by performing one's prescribed duty according to varna and ashram, by endeavoring to do that perfectly, the net result after a very long time is that you should become gradually Krishna conscious. And nishkama is the side effect of the cultivation of Krishna consciousness. Um, but but that's the benefit of varnashram. We've been talking about varnashram. So the essence of varnashram is we spoke a little bit recently about cooperation. And that is again a side effect. That's not the objective of Varnashram. The objective of Varnashram is somehow or other to always remember Krishna and never forget Krishna, to somehow please Krishna by the activity that you are naturally inclined to do. So Varnashram is a science that instructs how, by acting according to um, your conditioned nature, you can perfect yourself and actually please Krishna and perfect your life in that way. But it's a very slow and gradual process. Um, there was a discussion that a group of devotees had with Srila Prabhupada um, in Srila Prabhupada's final days, in which um, he was talking about the fact that he had no lamentation. Um, it appeared certain that he was going to be leaving his body soon, and he said that he had no lamentation, and then he said that he did have one lamentation, and that it was that he had not um, successfully introduced Varnashram, and that 50% of his work was left undone. And devotees have heard and repeated that discussion countless times, and it has formed the foundation of a whole understanding, particularly in connection with farm projects. Devotees are thinking that, well, we have a tremendous duty to try to fulfill Srila Prabhupada's desire to implement Varnashram. But there is a misunderstanding, a widespread misunderstanding about precisely what Srila Prabhupada meant. When he speaks of Varnashram, he's talking about the essential aspect of Varnashram, which is that it is a means of organizing activity in such a way that it fosters remembrance of Krishna and enables you to please Krishna by your natural activity. And so, therefore, when the devotees asked Srila Prabhupada, how will you do this? He didn't talk about the four varnas and the four ashrams and setting up some hierarchy in temples. He said, I will go to Gita Nagari and I will sit down and I will show you how to live off the land. And that's something to think about, because the activity of living off the land seems to be unrelated to the system of Varnashram. What's the connection? Why is that? Why did he want to do it in that way? And it's because um, that is the means by which we connect ourselves to the cycle of sacrifice that Krishna describes in the third chapter of Bhagavad Gita, where he says, Anad Bhavanti Bhutani, um, that by depending upon Krishna, by depending upon the land and the cows, you naturally remember Krishna. You always remember Krishna. And so your life becomes perfected. Um, Here in uh, the seventh canto, a little bit earlier, we saw in Srila Prabhupada's purport, he described, let's see if I can find it now. Yeah, 21st text. of chapter 11 in the seventh canto, says, Srila Prabhupada says in his purport, in the institution of Varnashram Dharma, the symptoms of a Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, Brahmachari, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, and Sannyasi are all described. The ultimate aim is achutatmatvam, to think always of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu or Krishna. So it's Vishnu Smaranam, Krishna Smaranam. Sorry I took us over time. I'm finished, actually. That was my point. It's all about remembering Krishna. Jaya Shri Shri Radha Damodar.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. It's always nice hearing from you. Thank you for sharing all those nice points. It was actually really nice. I was actively listening. So thank you for sharing. Thank you everyone for participating. By also listening to Bhagavatam class today, it was nice to have all of your virtual association. The altar is going to open soon, so we'll end here. Ventrad Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Gaura Premanandi. Haribol.
like for Puja. Gita, go free.